Why has Slovakia turned from a country that was very, very supportive of Ukraine, now having almost this slide where we are seeing more and more Ukraine skeptics come and take this position? And or at least take positions of power, as we saw recently over the weekend with their brand new prime minister take power and won a vote. And one of the first things they did was they stopped weapon shipments to Ukraine. And immediately, it should be really highlighted, this was not universally favored. There have been big protests against this decision. So when we say, why is Slovakia turning against Ukraine, it is a really deeper, more complex question than just it's this reason. There is a lot of stuff going on and in play here, and we're probably not going to be able to cover it all. But I think this should very much act as a primer for people when you look at another country, why a country like Slovakia might turn against Ukraine. One of the big things that their new president is coming in to it, what he has said, he said he wants to see, he wants to see peace rather than a continuation of war. Bear in mind, last year there was an attempt at a peace conference. Russia didn't turn up. So if this new Slovakian prime minister would like maybe to be the host of the next peace conference, well, we'll see if Russia turns up this time. But I don't expect them to be advancing their demands beyond what they have already demanded, which is, of course, the complete and utter capitulation of Ukraine. And once again, it would be fascinating to ask the new prime minister of Slovakia, what he thought of this. Like, what if he does host this, and you've got Ukraine, and shockingly, let's say Vladimir Putin walks into these peace talks, he sits down and goes, "I want the complete, absolute capitulation of Ukraine. That is all I am going to accept. You accept it, or else I walk, and we continue this war." Like, what do you do then? Because ultimately, that is what we are seeing, the complete, absolute capitulation. The idea that Russia, and winning this war, not only takes even more territory from Ukraine, because it always had these big territorial ambitions. The idea that a lot of these peace people that are coming forward with this idea of, oh, you don't understand, if only Ukraine had negotiated at the beginning, they would have only lost this small piece of land. Now they're going to lose all, this land. That's not the truth at all. That is just, I think, panic spinning. Putin's ambition was always, always to take all this land and to cripple Ukraine in a permanent way. Because not only are we going to see a permanent taking a very large chunk of land, taking pretty much all of its coastline, possibly starting off a conflict in Moldova between them and Transnistria, backed up by that new land bridge that they now conveniently have, thanks to taking all that, Ukrainian coastline. That could be another conflict that sparks after this. The mass reduction in the Ukrainian armed forces. So if Russia wants to sort of come back and do this again, well, they don't have the armed forces capable to be able to repel a Russian invasion like they did last time. So again, there are serious questions that I always would love to put to these, I don't know, Ukraine skeptics, but they never really want to answer, or at least they answer them in very dodgy ways. But anyway, I want to get back to this question. Why is Slovakia seeming to slide this way? I think it's a very interesting question. I think it's a question that should be looked at and examined, because it goes beyond just Ukraine fatigue. Because that's what a lot of people would say. And there is an element to that. I will not say that there aren't elements to that, but it does seem that there are elements to that involved. So we're going to have a look at this today, because I think it's well worth sort of examining and looking at. But before we do go into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, the one station link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So let's have a look at this. So this comes from Politico. Why Slovakia's Fico, I think that's how you say it, hates Ukraine. So, Slovakia's new leader, Robert Fico, made waves during the country's recent election campaigns by warning that he would not, quote, send another bullet to help Ukraine fend off the Russian invasion. His dramatic shift from the strongly pro-Ukrainian stance of the outgoing government is partly based on the Slovaks' history of sympathy towards Russia. But there is also very personal reasons why Fico dislikes Ukraine. And it all dates back to 2009 when Fico was Prime Minister of Slovakia. On the 7th of January that year, a long-running split between Russia and Ukraine over natural gas boiled over, and Russian gas flows across Ukraine to EU countries stopped. A crisis for Slovakia in the middle of winter. So as you can see, there's more at play, as I said, more at play going on than was initially said here. So the cutoff was costing the Slovak economy around 100 million euros a day, as the factories were then forced to shut down, and a desperate Fico called both Vladimir Putin, the Russian Prime Minister, and the Ukrainian PM, Yulia Tolshenko, to try and get the gas restarted. Early on the morning of January the 14th, a Slovak delegation led by Fico landed in Kiev to meet the Ukrainian government. The Ukrainians then made them wait, then wait some more. After 3 hours after arriving, the Slovaks were then taken into a meeting, which, to their surprise, included members of the press, with cameras rolling. Tysmenko spent about 20 minutes berating Fico for taking Moscow's side in the gas dispute, saying that it was an absolutely unpleasant situation and Fico was completely red with anger. It was a disaster, said a senior Slovak official with knowledge of what happened back in 2009, speaking on the condition of being granted anonymity. He was absolutely humiliated. So as you can see here, there is a really bizarre personal reason why this guy hates Ukraine and has sort of flipped on them on this time. Now, I would say what happened there, and Ukraine sort of putting them into that sort of impromptu press conference without really knowing what was going on. Let's face it, not probably the best decision. Not probably the best decision. But unfortunately, this is something that is coming back to haunt them. Very, very much so, unfortunately. Luckily, this is not Czechoslovakia. Not Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, sorry. Wrong country entirely. Well, country doesn't even exist anymore. There you go. The Czech Republic or Czechia, depending. But, they have an artillery factory there that is pretty much working overtime. It is like the main artillery factory for pretty much producing most of the shells that are being, going to Ukraine. So they are very, very lucky that they weren't in a situation where, they had pretty much a factory that was working overtime to help supply them with those artillery shells. Otherwise, Ukraine would be even in a worse situation than they are today, with obviously this announcement. But I also want to stress there have been protests against this decision by people. So once again, it's not a whole Ukraine thing, but once again, you've got to sort of take these things that happened in the past and say, now I see why. Now I see why what's going on here, that there's something deeper going on. So let's continue this. So the Slovakians then flew on to Moscow, where they were then greeted by Putin at a very elaborate ceremony held in the Kremlin's opulent St. George Hall. After that, Fico began to take a very openly anti-Ukrainian position, and said that Alexander Dubyanov, the senior fellow of the Slovak Foreign Policy Association, he said that we do not need to support the Ukrainians. Ukrainians do not support us, and we do not have a serious conversation with us. This is now personal. Tizvenko, who is still very active in Ukrainian politics, has no specific details about this meeting, said her spokesperson Natalia Lelvo. This wasn't Kiev's only misstep during this gas crisis, though. On this January the 16th, the then Slovak president Ivan Giasapiki, I think that's how you say it, also flew to Kiev to meet with his counterpart, Viktor Yushchenko, who had told him that Naftogas, the Ukrainian energy firm, would be able to restart some gas flows to Slovakia. But during a meeting that was supposed to get the deal done, the head of the Naftogas also informed the two presidents that he would not be able to do that. The Ukrainians managed to humiliate both the prime minister, and the president of Slovakia, the senior official said, even though Tushchenko and Putin had negotiated an end to the crisis and the flows resumed on the 20th of January. But this left a very bitter taste of those experiences in Kiev now remain. And currently, in the certain political circles in Slovenia, they do not trust the Ukrainians, said the official. This is now coming back to haunt Kiev. Slovakia had been one of Ukrainian's strongest backers, and it sent its eastern neighbor a Soviet-era S-300 air defense system. It was the first country, along with Poland, to send jet fighters, an entire fleet of MiG-29s, and Slovakia's arms factories are also selling weapons and ammunition to Ukraine. So, again, as you can see, a big supporter. And now you've got this very anti sort of almost holding a grudge where they had been sort of, humiliated during that or they feel humiliated by this gas crisis. This is now having big repercussions on this. But during the election campaign, Figo did call a very dramatic change in policy, saying that the EU should help negotiate a peace agreement instead of weapons. He also blamed Ukraine for the war. Again, you cannot blame Ukraine for the war. It's not them. They did not start this. But he said this: the war in Ukraine did not start a year ago. It started in 2014 when Ukrainian Nazis and fascists started murdering Russian citizens in the Donbass and Luhansk, he said. That never happened. There was no such thing of this ever happening. The idea that this was a thing that happened, no, did not happen. Russian propaganda. But there you go. Otherwise, they'd be able to point to an event of this happening. But again, there you go. Anyway, on the 30th of September, the election of Figo's populist Shmia, I think that's how you say it, party came first with at least 23% of the vote. He is now set to take power at the head of a coalition of the three parties. After the election, the caretaker government halted the arms shipments to the Ukraine. The outgoing bureaucratic government in Slovakia will not send any more military material to Ukraine, a government spokesperson said. Figo has been very long sympathetic towards Moscow and the Soviet Union, so the policy shift isn't actually based on just his bitter memories of his 2009 treatment in Kiev, but it did have an impact. He definitely remembers what happened in 2009, and Slovakia's outgoing foreign minister, Miko Wojtkowski, said in this month's Global Tyler Summit. So, once again, more things at play here, more than just Ukraine fatigue. You've got changes in policy here. People might think that this guy is very right wing. He's not. He's actually quite left wing on this, which is super annoying because you almost might think that this guy's a tanky. And it certainly, when you see him come across, sympathetic to Moscow, sympathetic, to the Soviet Union, but very left wing, does seem to come across that way. But one of the worrying things is that one of the things that made Viktor Orban capitulate so much was that he didn't have any allies left. He'd lost his ally in Poland, but now does look like he's gained a new ally potentially in Slovakia. So maybe Viktor Orban is now safe again. Maybe he can now start, playing up again. Who knows? Because now, if he gets sort of punished in any way, shape, or form, well, now instead of Poland, it's Slovakia who comes along and sort of vetoes any of the punishments, being put on Hungary. We'll see. But this is honestly very, very worrying. and of course a major sort of component and a weapon supplier to Ukraine, unfortunately, has now said we're not going to supply you anymore. And all this at a time, I want to remind you, all this at a time where Ukraine is having a major ammo shortage. This is not good. This is not good. This is making Ukraine's position incredibly harder. Because one of the things about Ukraine fighting right now is to have a stronger position when it goes in to any potential negotiations. That is why Ukraine is fighting. And it is fighting to make sure that there are future security guarantees. Because a lot of Ukrainians will come out and say, we do not want to have to fight this war. And then 8-10 years down the line, we have to fight this again. Because so far, this has been the history up until this day. This has been sort of the biggest conflict from all these things dating all the way back to sort of the taking of, Crimea, back all the way back in 2008. So there is a long history of it. We've seen this. We sort of pushed them back. They came back again. We signed Minsk. They did this. They came back again. And we had to sign Minsk too. And then we had to sort of come back. And now we're here. And now they do not want to be in that situation again. So that is ultimately the reason why we should support Ukraine and support them for as long as they want to go on fighting and make sure that they have the material and stuff that they need, because they have proved time and time again when they have the stuff that they need, they can get the job done. And unfortunately, it does look like that we're going to have to wait potentially for either America to sort out what's going on there, or even potentially after November, which does give, and as we have seen, not making big advances, but making very slow and grinding advances. But every single inch they take is costing hundreds of thousands of Russian lives, which again goes to show you that Ukrainians are fighting and fighting very, very effectively. So, hey, we'll see what happens, but we do want this to sort of result in a Ukraine victory, whatever that may sort of that victory may look like. But we cannot allow Putin to sort of come away and claim some sort of victory either from this either, because it will just go on and embolden him. Putin's not going to stop here. He will go somewhere else. And if he is stopped here and thinks, well, I can't really do anything else after that, it's something we have to really look at and worry about for the future as well. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.